All right, welcome to the first installment of turning your home recordings into better sounding mixes and masters. We're going to take a look at the basis of your recording using the drums, taking the basic drum tracks to improve them. And the first step in that is the sort of boring task of doing phase and time alignment with the drums. The thing is, if you don't do that at the outset, no matter how many plugins and cool other tricks you do to the drums, you're not going to get a solid sound out of them. All right, so that's really important. Let's take a listen to the basic tracks here. Now, this is a little sample from the track called Who from the Sound Mills. In the previous post, if you listen from the beginning of that, you can hear a little bit of it. Okay, so there's the basic drum sound. Okay, and that's just the raw tracks. What we're going to do is work on improving that sound right here. The first thing to do is to determine what your reference point is. And we're going to take the overheads. Okay, unfortunately, this recording that I'm doing here right now, this video recording, is putting these somehow into mono. Even though I'm panning this here, you're only hearing it in mono. But that's okay this time around because we actually want to check, this time around we want to check that everything is phase coherent, and you generally would do that in mono anyway, so that's a really good idea to check it like that. So we'll just deal with that technical issue for now the way it is. Okay, we're going to come in, that crash there sort of obscures sort of the waveforms, so we're going to come up here. Let's take this, okay, this kick drum hit right here. Okay, our reference will be the overheads. Okay, we're going to focus everything around that. Okay, first of all, we can see here that here's our overheads, and they're pretty well aligned time-wise when the kick drum hits. Okay, these microphones were closer to the kick drum, so they're actually sounding a little bit earlier than the overheads actually were, because the sound took time from the moment it was hitting, the kick drum beater was hitting to for it to get up to the overheads. Okay, so that's the time delay between here and here. Okay, now that's relative phase is what you would call that. Okay, an absolute phase is the fact that this signal here, first of all, goes into the negative voltage before going to the positive voltage. Now, it could have been a wiring thing. It could have been the way the microphone cable was, or a phase switch on the console, whatever. But we do want to get these into, as our point of reference, we want to turn these into a positive initial phase. Okay, so in the absolute phase, we want to make these positive. So let's simply start off by taking a basic handy plug-in here, trim in Pro Tools, okay, and flipping that phase switch, okay. You could do this on EQ or other plugins sometimes, but I like to just put a trim plugin on there, and then I'll always remember when I see that that's the one that's taking care of the phase for me. If I was to flip it on another plugin and then eventually move that while I'm mixing, then that could go out of phase, and then I'll start wondering what's going on when it starts sounding odd. Okay, so both of these should be trimmed just for the phase switch, okay? Now, these are actually, even though they look this way, we know because trim's there, this is now in the positive, okay? Now, this kick drum mic here, all right, this is already in the proper phase, okay, to match with these now that these are flipped, even though you don't see it, okay? What we want to do with this track then is time align this a little bit, okay? This is not something you have to do, but we're going to do it here just as a matter of being really, really complete on all the tracks that we're doing here. So I'd select that, and I'd hit Option or Command A to make sure that I've got everything else there in the drum track in case there were edits, and there were, okay? And I'm going to line that up a lot closer to the initial impact here. Now the same is going to go for this one. Select that track, okay? Command A, got all of them, all the regions that are in there, or the clips for you Pro Tools 10 users, okay? So now these are all now not only going to be in absolute phase, but in relative phase here, okay? So they're now time aligned as well as the absolute phase being in order. Okay, this we're going to take this trim plug-in and copy it up here too. Shortcut for that, of course, is the alternate key there. All right, you drag that up there. Now this one is also going to be aligned to that. Okay, now if we listen to these, let's listen to them for a moment. Not aligned, we're going to bypass these. Could actually even just undo the motion that we had there. Okay, moving those, and we'll redo that in a second. Listen to a second of this. Okay, that sounds thin and phasey to me. Okay, let's redo our time alignment. Okay, and also do our absolute phase alignment here. Okay, now listen to this. Oops. Okay, you can immediately hear that the kick drum comes into focus. Okay, now this is the kind of stuff that we want to do to all our drum tracks. Okay, you can hear that this is a serious improvement. All right, this is really good. So let's also just increase the zoom level there a little bit. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line up the absolute phase on the snare drums as well. And we can also see that these need a flip here. Okay. The thing is, though, not to make the mistake, this is not a snare hit. We actually need to go and get a snare hit for that. You might have seen that that was just a moment ago there. That was not in. Okay, this was not in the correct absolute phase, but that's because a kick drum hit was coming through on it, so don't make that mistake. Move on out to where there's a snare hit. Now you'll notice that the snare bottom, okay, now that one actually happens to be the proper phase. Now think about it, the snare drum, the microphone underneath the snare drum has, when that drumstick comes down on the snare, it pushes the air towards it, so you get that positive motion there, okay? So that was already okay on the bottom, whoops, on the bottom head. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to also line that up with the overhead, get that absolute, get that relative phase in order here. Okay, the time alignment, so to speak. Okay, and then we'll deal with absolute phase as well on this one. Okay, we're gonna let's do this thing where we're going to listen to let's listen to the snares before we align them with the overheads. Okay. Okay, thin and phasey. All right, now let's do all the alignment work here. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. Command A, select all the regions that go with that, and line this one up. Okay, you don't have to get crazy and zoom in really, really close because you're going to get a lot of variations anyway. Okay, we just want to get nice and close there. At this zoom level. Okay, now same thing, let's take a listen here. Okay, getting a little bit more in focus, but the biggest thing about it here is to get this one into phase with everything else. So these were already flipped. Okay, now listen. Okay, now the snare's got body. Okay, sounds nice and solid. All right, now put in our kick drums as well. Listen to all this. Okay, now we've gotten to a good starting point here, okay, where we can then start putting on other plugins, improving the tone, taking a close listen to the kick drum, etc., and EQing that and working on that, okay? I wanted to get you started on this. Actually, we've got another mic here. Now, this one's really cool. This was a ribbon microphone that I had actually suggested that they put up over top of the drums when they started recording. Oops, this is bouncing around for some reason. Okay, this one's also just a tiny bit late compared to the others. We can also line that up a little bit. Listen to this one solo. It's a very cool tone. Okay, that's got kind of a vintage, funky kind of thing going on. I really like the tone of that microphone. So we're going to feature that. We're going to compress it hard. Get some tone out of it. Okay, now you can see this is lined up better here. Again, get the phase correct. Okay, and let's listen to that in with the snare. Okay, take that in and out with the snare. You'll hear that that's a really cool sounding mic. Okay, listen to the body that gives the snare. To the kick drum too, really. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is starting to get pretty good now. All right, we're getting everything lined up here, everything in order. The room mics, okay, we don't want to line those up because it's actually that time delay that is causing the depth that they'll give to the sound, okay? You can notice here, all right, compared to the overheads, these actually come in quite a bit later. And we're actually going to push that even a little bit further. We're going to, in an upcoming one, we're going to bust these and compress them, and we're going to put a little bit of delay on there to help get that into focus. Okay, these will also need to be phase corrected. You can see they're also starting with a sort of a downward thump there, although because of the time distance, the relative phase doesn't really make so much of a difference. But just to be clear about it, we'll do that as well. Okay, we can even just do it here. Just again, put these trim plugs on here. Okay, all right, now we'll listen to, really I think I've got everything else muted, so we can just hear all the drums together. Okay, group our rooms. Okay, Command G. Okay, they added a nice thing. Okay, so now what we've done here is we've solidified the drum tracks, all right? We've taken what before that was kind of a phasey, thin-sounding sort of thing and gotten it into much better shape. Okay, so that's the first step. That's the first thing you got to do. Do that to all your tracks. Now, this was a 15-song project, so I had to go through each one and do that. Okay, so it's a little bit tedious, but it's something that's got to be done. And the improvement is clear. If you start laying into something like this without doing that, you're really just kind of fighting an uphill battle. So, all right, we'll see you next post, and we're going to go into some of the other basic things you need to do for setting up your drums. Thanks for watching.